Welcome to Thought Hack.
Art's important. I love music. I love infinite. And now, like, what if I don't feel like?
So for starters, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time out to have this conversation with me. I mean, way before they reached out and connected us to have this conversation, I was a fan of IMVU because of, I believe, what you guys were able to do with that whole Kim Kardashian app thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, whenever we get the chance, we'll definitely touch on that. But first and foremost, welcome.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I'm excited. I actually, your book that you recently came out with is on my list, and I didn't know this, but it's part of a larger series.
Yeah, it's part of the Lean Startup series. So I don't know if you remember, there was a book called Lean Startup that was written probably around 10 years ago. That book became one of the best-selling business books, but it was all around the concept of creating a minimal viable product. So, instead of trying to create the perfect product and launching it, the idea was try to create a version of the product and put it out there, and then try to iterate and improve the product over time by getting real customer feedback and data. And that book was done by Ries, who's actually a co-founder of IMVU, where I work right now, and that book was actually based on what he had done at IMVU. So, the whole concept on the minimal viable product was created at IMVU, which a lot of, most startups now sort of follow that whole mantra on product iteration and creation.
Okay, so it's IMVU, not IMVU.
Yeah.
In my defense, I first was introduced to the company at a trade show, and I guess the person who was representing the company called it IMVU or whatever. I think it was like at the time, you could do like personal apps or personal characters for yourself or loved ones or kids or whatever, which was really cool. So your follow-up to his book is sort of expounding on the original book, but from the point of view of incorporating like AI.
Yeah, so the original book was all around sort of creating. It was all about being data driven and trying to create the perfect product. But as everybody knows, once you have the product, that doesn't guarantee your business is going to be successful, because after that, the next big challenge is really how do you acquire customers, and more importantly, how do you generate revenue? And so what my book does, it kind of connects the dots from the lean startup about creating the product, but after that, how do you get better, faster, and smarter around customer acquisition, retention, and monetization? And a lot of that nowadays, because there's so much data that's out there about customers, so really your data, and if you use your data correctly, it becomes your superpower for growth, and that's what the book goes into, and it talks about how AI can really help you turn data into a superpower to grow your business,
especially when your startup and your resources are minimal, manpower is minimal, and you could basically kickstart and I guess essentially evolve over time, sort of learning as you go and becoming more efficient at customer acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, as you said, resource constraints is always a challenge for any business, but especially a startup. And so the idea is, how do you continue to leverage to get more done with less? And so so with AI and automation, you can literally have like an intelligent machine that's able to do a lot of the execution work for us. So it enables you to just run a lot of experiments and learn quickly to really figure out what's working or what's not working, without needing to continue to keep hiring a lot of people to help you do that work. And so ultimately, it helps to reduce your risks to try and figure out their answers a lot faster in terms of where you need to go next to get, to acquire the right types of customers, uh, build the right types of product experiences, and figure out the right ways to monetize those customers.
So in the part of the, I guess, the experimenting and figuring things out with customers, how best would a startup acquire said data?
Yeah. So, the starting point is to at least have some data to work with, and generally, once you got some customer data, then with AI, it will help you to identify like who's your best quality customers, right? Because in your data, one way to look at that is who spends the most amount of money with you, or who invests the most amount of time into your product, depending on what your success metrics are. And once you sort of identify, hey, these are the types of users that we know represent our best lifetime value customer, then AI is able to sort of take that, and then most places where people spend money is things on social networks like Facebook or Instagram.
And you could like access your metrics on there like pretty easily.
Yeah, so you can kind of take that data, and then you can sort of have AI sort of build audiences across all of those platforms, and help you to match up to these are the users that match up to the ones that are really your best time value customers. So they call it lookalike. So it helps you to build better audiences. And so that's one thing. It will help you to target the right people. But then the other thing it really helps you do is figure out what's the right message to target people with, because targeting people with a wrong message isn't going to get the right result. And there's a lot of things that people talk about personalization, but personalization kind of starts at the ad level, where you're targeting the right person, and you're capturing their attention with the right message, so that it enables them for your ad to stand out from all of the other ads that are out there. And then figuring out what's the right way for them to respond to your ad. And then once you know where the users are coming from, then it's a matter of creating the right experience within the product and trying to predict that pretty quickly based on what users are doing or not doing, to identify what's the right experience that you want to sort of navigate them through in your product or service that will enable them to get engaged into the product as quickly as possible. And that's about really identifying, what's the best value proposition to show the user based on the intent that's bringing them into the product.
So when we're talking about again, acquisition of customers and scaling your business through the use of AI and using the consumer data, and I've had this conversation recently with a couple of colleagues. Where does I guess ethics play a role in the use and acquisition of said data when you're scaling? We're talking about a lot bigger companies. A small startup isn't really too worried about that, but when you're talking about a company like say like a Facebook or a Netflix or something.
Yeah, I feel with any AI that you use, it's always good to have some human oversight into what the AI is actually doing, and ultimately there's it's building an algorithm. An algorithm is kind of a prediction and a recommendation based on what the data is doing, and the key thing is to really give the AI a clear outcome in terms of, hey, this is what we're trying to optimize towards. Like, what's your definition of success, whether it's to acquire a customer at a certain cost, or to get a certain return on investment based on how much money you spend in and how much money you need to recoup within a certain time frame. And then based on that, one of the things that you want to keep that we do and it's important to do is continue to keep having some kind of oversight into is the machine actually targeting the right people that's based on the values of the business. For example, if diversity is a value, which it is for us, we want to make sure that we're targeting a broad subset of users, and we're not just honing in on a certain type of user that inherently, may look good in the short term, but it injects a bias into our community, because then our community is going to be over-indexed on a certain type of ethnicity, for example, which then doesn't kind of doesn't work into the long-term value of diversity, which is what we want our community to be as diverse as possible, so people can feel safe to share and in an environment and be able to like engage with people in a way where they don't sort of feel like they're being restricted on how they want to express themselves.
Yeah, because a lot of especially when we're having a conversation about AI, and I know we're drifting off, and I'm going to recenter us in a bit, but a lot of conversations around AI, especially in relation to data, is I guess the general public not really having, I guess, a solid understanding of how valuable and how much money like these companies are generating off of their data, and how best to protect that data, or I guess have equity in the overall process of how, and when the data is being used.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important is to be transparent about how you use data with customers, and you have to provide a value. You have to exchange value, because data at the end of the day, if somebody's sharing data about, hey, this is who I am, this is what I like, then they're sharing a part of them with you, and in exchange for you taking that and providing them a really relevant, personalized experience. So for us, we don't really use data to just go and like sell data. That's not really what we do. We really use data to try and create good, personalized, relevant experiences, and come up with recommendations within our product. So our product is a social network. So, the data enables us to try and match people up with other users that have similar interests. It enables us to make recommendations on products, because a lot of people create virtual worlds and customize their avatar in different ways. They have different tastes in fashion. So if we have an idea in terms of what kind of fashion taste somebody has, or what kind of chat rooms might be really good for them to connect with other people based on those interests, then that's how we sort of use that to come up with recommendations. And then the other thing we know is there's certain people who are going to be more likely to purchase like IMVU credits to redeem, to buy this stuff, and there's certain people who may not have the means to buy those credits, but they want to earn those credits. So what we try to do is try to match people up and give them the options, like either you can pay for the credits, or you can try to earn it by doing actions like watching videos or filling out surveys. But that's another way that you can get those credits without needing to spend money, but still enjoy the full experience of what the IMVU virtual reality world's all about.
So outside of the consumer acquisition side of AI, what other ways can a company basically, I guess, optimize their day-to-day using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, there's ultimately there's so many like use cases where you can use AI. There's like the practical use case, and there's kind of the outlandish ideas, right? For us, and my recommendation is, that it's always good to sort of focus on ways to use AI where it's solving a problem that isn't just relevant today, but will be relevant, 5-10 years down the road, because ultimately it takes an investment of time and resources. And so, you want to make sure that you continue to get payback for all of that time and resources that have been invested. So, outside of like acquiring customers, retaining customers, and monetizing customers, you know, you know, you know, AI is all about it's all about data at the end of the day. It's like taking data and then processing data to try and come up with predictions and outcomes. So that can kind of help you with forecasting. If you had an e-commerce business, it will be about, how much product do you want to manufacture, or how much product do you want to order based on seasonality, and ultimately come up with the optimal sort of forecasting around different products. With customer service, it really helps out because there's a cost, because ultimately AI is either going to help you save money or it's going to help you make money, and it helps you save money by reducing the number of agents that you might need to hire in a call center. If you can get an AI machine to be a lot better at answering questions that customers have, then it stops the number of people that need to get on a call. So that's an example of cost saving. And another area where AI really helps is around fraud mitigation and detection. In the finance industry, a lot of these credit cards that end up getting stolen, one of the reasons why they're able to predict out pretty quickly if certain transactions are fraudulent or not, it's based on AI that sort of looks at all these patterns and behaviors, and if they spot anomalies, for example, if they know that I live in San Francisco and suddenly somebody's using my credit card in Turkey, then that's one of hundreds of different signals that they're probably looking at to try and detect, hey, this doesn't look right. We need to send an alert to verify, was this the right transaction or not? And then beyond that, AI can really help in terms of just training. AI can help with developing skills and education and healthcare. For example, right now everybody's talking about this cure to create a vaccination for COVID-19. But one of the reasons why they're talking about, hey, this could potentially be here in the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months is because AI is doing a lot of testing around all of the data they're getting around where these outbreaks are happening, and then trying to sort of take that data on outbreaks, like what were people doing that before they ultimately got infected, and then what are things that they are doing when they're infected that they're surviving versus dying, and this would normally take a long time, right? And when they start testing these different clinical trials around the vaccinations, normally it takes a lot longer to try and get that data and process it, but because they're using AI, they're able to process it at a much faster rate to develop insights, which is why they're able to right now get through the different stages and to of clinical trials, which and I think one of those is now kind of in the final stage, which wouldn't have been possible, even 5-10 years ago, because normally it takes 3 to 4 years to kind of aggregate and have that high level of accuracy, in your predictions. Like in business, you could probably be off, in terms of predicting something, around sales or acquiring customers, and even if your accuracy isn't, let's say, 80%, you'll probably be comfortable with that because you're willing to take the risk of being wrong 20% of the time. But when it comes to human life, you want the accuracy to be a lot higher, like 99.999%, which is why you definitely want to have AI to be there to help you to get enough data and get to that higher level of accuracy.
Yeah, and you would definitely hope that was the thinking.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm hoping somebody's not somewhere like, oh, well, 80% is good enough.
I know.
So, what do you think about guys? And I know we're kind of harping on AI, and we'll jump off for a second. My segues are awful, by the way. What do you think about guys like Elon Musk, who sort of have the opposite idea of AI, and they're sort of carrying this gospel of doom and gloom and AI plus quantum computing could be like the end of the world kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, people definitely have different perspectives, and I think Elon Musk is such a well-known person in in the world that anything he says obviously carries weight. But I feel like he's looking at it from a different level, because the reality is with any technology, there's good and bad uses depending on how you develop it. For me, the most important thing that we have to remember is that artificial intelligence is created by human intelligence. So we shouldn't be thinking like we're the victims of this technology, but we're the creators of this technology. So like with anything, we have the ability to put guardrails and checks and balances in place to make sure that this technology is going to be used for good versus for evil, so to speak. And and I think what Elon Musk is saying, that if this is allowed to go on without having oversights and checks and balances in place, then it could ultimately be used in an evil way, right? I don't think that robots are going to be able sort of take over the world.
Terminator scenarios.
Terminator scenario. Although those, I mean, those are the sort of stories that sell great movies, though, right? And books. But what I feel is just like with anything, technology is really there to really at the core to help provide more value to our life by helping us save time or be more efficient in and so with AI in the extreme form, ultimately, if it ends up going down that path, then it's really because there weren't checks and balances that were put in place to limit and mitigate those kind of risks. Yeah, but at the core, it's I mean, I'll take the navigation as a good example. I don't know about you, but it saves a lot of arguments with your spouses, right? When you get in a car and trying to fight over directions. But that's kind of like what AI is. It has to know, like, what do you want, right? It's got all this data, and if you tell it the direction of where you want to go and where you're starting, it will figure out a way to get you there. You may need to recalibrate along the way if you get off course, but it will kind of.
The hope is that this becomes like sort of an extension of yourself, and it accentuates you versus starts to think on its own. And again, Terminator scenarios, end of the world sort of thing, which is, I guess, what Elon's thinking.
Yeah, that's right. Like with anything, you want to make sure that you always continue to put a switch in there that you can turn it off when you need it, right?
Yeah, hopefully. So in regards to startups, you've been a part of some of these massive companies, like for instance, Roku, which, I mean, started off as this sort of small niche kind of product, and now has, I feel like, become a leader in the whole like cutting the cable world, and that whole idea of streaming versus cable and all of that. When you have ideas that I guess shake things up, or I guess disrupt normal everyday life, how do you spot these opportunities? How do you feel like, okay, this is going to be something big?
That's a really good question. I think the more you can relate to any pain point personally, then it kind of motivates you even more to try and find a cure for it, so to speak. And a lot of the companies that I've been fortunate to be part of, we're trying to solve for problems that I could relate to, and I think and that kind of help because I was able to personally relate to what they're trying to solve for. But the other thing that I will put out is, with any startup, there's no guarantee that it's ever going to work out, right? It's like you always have this aspirational dream that, hey, this thing could be successful, but the reality is that 95% of startups fail, right? And and for the most part, uh, the the better thing to keep in mind is whether it succeeds or fails, you just want to make sure that you put the right process in place to at least give it the best chance to succeed. And so, one of the best ways to do that is to continue to run as many is continue to have this mindset around learning about running as many experiments as possible, having a hypothesis like, hey, should we do this with a product? Should we do that with a product? Shall we try to acquire this customer or acquire that customer? But the idea is run as many experiments and try to figure out, you know, um, whether something's going to work or it's not going to work, and try to get to that learning by spending the least amount of money as possible, so you don't end up like wasting a lot of money, because at the end of the day, the reason why a lot of startups fail is because they run out of money. So preserving capital as much as possible and increasing your velocity of learning is the way to try and become successful. And now, as opposed to before, is now you can leverage AI to really enable you to have a limitless scenario of creating all these different hypotheses and be able to run experiments and get all this data and get the answers a lot quicker. And that's why I think AI is going to really help a lot more startups to become more successful, because it's going to kind of cut out the learning curves that happen to try and figure out if something is working or not. And then the other thing with startups is, at least the ones that end up becoming successful, it's really important to figure out if there's if it's trying to solve something, is it really solving something that's going to be meaningful for a lot of people, which is known as, like, what's the total addressable market, like is it solving something that's only a problem for a few people, or is it something for millions of people? Because that really determines how big the business is going to end up becoming. Because if you solve something but only a few people find it interesting, it's never going to become big, no matter if you do everything else right, because there's just not enough demand for it at the end.
So with everything going on with COVID, do you feel like how drastically do you feel like it changes the whole startup market, even in regards to like with all the help from AI, all the resources you could possibly have, with everything going on with COVID? Do you feel like for instance, I had a conversation with someone last week who believes companies who were viable before COVID will remain viable, and the companies that were going to fail before COVID or are failing during COVID were going to fail anyway? Or this is just something where we definitely need help from the public sector to come in and kind of like, I guess, post up and hold up the startup community?
Yeah, so what I would say, I mean, COVID-19 is really unfortunate. It's impacting so many people and businesses and economies and health in so many drastic ways. But one thing that COVID-19 is forcing a lot of businesses or startups to do is to think differently about surviving through this process, and make sure that they can set themselves up to thrive when things get better. And one way to do that is to really embrace digital, because now what COVID-19 has done is, I mean, there were a lot of people that were spending time online, whether it's on their mobile device or using all these different types of apps. But now it's forced a lot of people that were kind of on the border about doing that. So now, the more people are now being forced to adopt these new habits of spending a large proportion of their life online, whether it's buying online, connecting with people online, or finding ways to entertain themselves online. And so, the businesses that are going to sort of thrive and survive are the ones that can adopt these new user behavior habits that are being created. And so when it comes to startups, you know, it's really important to think about, how is this changing the way people are spending their time ultimately, and where they're spending their time, and how can you make their life more convenient based on these challenges that we're going through. And and so, the businesses, unfortunately, that are struggling, to what you were saying, the ones that were, like retail businesses, were kind of struggling to a certain extent before, and the ones that have been able to withstand this better are the ones that ended up becoming, multi-channel. So they had, the ability for people to buy online as well as buying in retail. But the ones that didn't, are struggling. A lot of the local stores, unfortunately, that never really had the ability to to provide products or services through the internet, have struggled right now too. But having said that, it's created different ways for business to survive too. Like restaurants have now pivoted to where they become these, where people can just, take out and pick up, and it's changed the way, like, where people used to use a lot of, like, rideshare companies to get from one place to another. Now those drivers have pivoted into becoming delivery drivers pretty much full time, right? So, I feel,
I have you like my use of DoorDash has gone up
I know,
1,000%.
I know, me too. And so, I feel, the key thing is that, any businesses that can focus on making that digital experience better for someone are going to do well post COVID. But the ones that were completely focused on, without offline experiences, without really having a digital component, are going to find it challenging. But the good and bad is, you know the companies that companies now are pivoting or changing the way they're doing business in some way, shape, or fashion to adopt to the new reality of what the post-COVID world is going to look like. And ultimately, with startups, generally you have to go through a couple of different iterations of what your business is before you end up becoming really successful. So, this is another phase where they're going to, where they're reinventing how they can kind of adopt to the new reality of where we're at, or where
I
we're going
mean,
to
but
go.
you definitely have businesses that, are in a way based on like this experience. It's an experiential thing, like a
Yeah.
movie theater.
Yeah.
So the virtual version of that we already had, which was just streaming from home. So like a movie theater, I believe I just read an article earlier about AMC doing some type of deal with Universal, and I'm curious to see what that's going to look like moving forward. But I feel like a lot of businesses are without that consumer confidence sort of just become obsolete. They just kind of get phased out.
Yeah. And the movie experience, and just like, kind of going to a restaurant, going to a bar, going to conferences. I mean, a big part of this was more about just connecting with people, right? Being social in real life. And, right now, that's the thing that I miss a lot, right? It's just, just having that human connection. And that's where, social networks, and even a lot of these types of apps, like gaming apps, where people are actually congregating and playing games together, because it's a way for them to still kind of stay connected even though they're not in the same place at the same time. And this is where, MVU, you know uh, is helping to fill a need too, because at MVU, people are able to create these virtual reality worlds of where they want to escape to, and they're able to, like, at least transport themselves away from just thinking about where they are right now, into a virtual world, and making, all these, like, friends, and connecting with people in a virtual environment, in a virtual environment, where even though it's virtual, but the feeling still, people still have the same feelings about, wanting to be needed, and wanting to be validated and valued, right? So yeah. But yeah, I feel like, there's there's a lot of cabin fever going on right now, and
I'm going insane.
it's going insane. And so, the thing is, what kind of businesses can actually come in and give you that sort of, like what's the new normal going to be of going out? Because movie theaters, as you mentioned, you know, you know, for the most part, people don't want to be going to a place unless there's going to be, like they're going to have to rearrange the seating or come up with different ways of.
I've seen a couple of drive-ins pop up.
Yeah, yeah. There's actually a drive-in near where we live, and I mean, we checked it out a couple of months back. But yeah, the idea is.
How was it?
It wasn't too bad, but it's the idea is you kind of, now people are just creating their own little pods within pods, right? Where you sort of have a pod of people that you kind of know are sort of, doing similar things in terms of their lifestyles. So then you kind of feel safe about not needing to, just isolate yourself from them, right? And the thing that I find hard, and I have kids, is like when you're young, going to school, having those social interactions. A lot of that's gone away right now with a lot of school that's kind of moved into being online, Zoom or whatever. And the question is, how is that going to impact them? Because socially, we don't really know that, to be honest, until we kind of look back at this, group of kids in 2-3 years down the road, because that's when a lot of the social behaviors that have been changed are going to manifest themselves, right?
Well, I mean, hopefully, because my kids have pretty much been doing everything via Zoom, like, talking to teachers, talking to friends, or FaceTiming or whatever. Hopefully that holds them over temporarily. I mean, it's been driving me nuts. Like, for instance, not being able to like physically do the podcast, or not being able to, I don't know, go sit in a restaurant and do stuff like that. We just took for granted for so long that now, like, I would literally do anything, to go and just sit in a movie theater and just, just something simple like watch a movie. I feel like the pendulum, hopefully when things sort of start to calm down, is going to swing back the other way, and literally everyone's just going to run out of their homes and just be outside. I mean, hopefully. And like, people won't be so weird anymore. I was at like a Walgreens, and everyone was just like, you're just afraid of everyone.
I know it is crazy. But one thing that we know as humans is that we're pretty adaptable, right? Based on the situation. And yeah, I mean, none of us were even thinking that we're walking around with masks.
It looks so crazy when you look at people in like Asia wear masks all day. I know.
Right? You used to think they were the crazy ones, and now it's us, right? Doing the same thing.
Look at us now.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but yeah, I mean, my kids, obviously spend a lot of time on devices now, and it's like now it's creating a whole different kind of addiction, where trying to get them to come, let's go outside, let's ride a bike, go on a walk or whatever. It's like, no, that's a whole.
But how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the kids using devices? You have people who are proponents for them being so tech savvy, because my daughter, I believe I bought her an iPad when she was 1. You know what I mean? Like, it's this very intuitive thing that she kind of caught on to immediately. And then you have other people who believe that kids shouldn't be allowed to get devices or be on social media till they're like 18.
Yeah, I mean, like you, my kids were exposed to devices early, and I mean, there's obviously benefits and cons to anything, depending on how extreme you go into something, right? But the reality is, these kids are, just like other generations, are going to be a lot more savvier with technology, because they can just pick it up. And, for us, like typing things in, they're probably they're all about just voice now. I mean, my kids just, I mean, that's the way they kind of communicate. It's not about, emails either. It's about, text messages or whatever. But the idea is, you don't want to deprive them of that, because otherwise they won't be able to relate to the greater cohort of users of other kids that they're going to have to interact with when they go to school. So they're going to have some commonality on how to connect with the other kids. I feel the challenge obviously is, how much do you sort of, moderate and what kind of, restrictions do you put around it? I think part of the challenge as parents right now is that is if you're working from home, it's like, how do you set boundaries between when work stops or because everybody knows where you are for the most part,
Yeah.
right? And so everybody's kind of sending you emails, but I feel that, like with kids, it's a matter of, putting some restrictions where you try to get them to take some breaks as well, and just like with anything, you just got to have some kind of balance where, spending time on a device is more like a privilege than a right, where you just get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there was a point where this was it was a situation where it was a privilege, where, like, I remember when my dad bought and I might be telling my age a little bit, my dad bought our first computer, and he called Dell on the phone, and like, they shipped it and we set it up, and it was just sort of, it was optional. You could still do your homework in a multitude of other ways, whereas now it's just assumed that you have a computer, and it's assumed that you have internet access. So now it's almost, and I think we should treat it as such, the internet's a utility. Like, you don't really have the option of not having it.
Yeah, and you're right. I might age myself a little by saying, one of the companies I started working for was the internet dial-up service provider.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I'm familiar with the one you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's funny. It's not. It's funny how, in those days where even to get on the internet, I mean, you were willing to, like, give up your phone line and
Kick
wait
people
for
off the phone.
kick people off the phone. Don't come to, and now it's like, you turn on the device, and if you don't get the internet right away, even if it's like 2 seconds slow, you kind
You're
of
losing your mind.
lose your mind. Yeah, but I think the other thing that you bring up too is access is so important too, because before it wasn't like a lot of people had the internet, but now people that don't have the internet are missing out on access to learning all this stuff, and that's where I feel the government and institutions have to do a better job to make sure that in this new digital economy or digital world or whatever we want to call it, that everybody kind of is moving up together, and people aren't getting left behind, because that then results in social inequality as well as a lot of other issues.
Because I mean, the thing that sucks about the way government works, especially now, is you have all of this, like, all the politics and all of the bureaucratic nonsense.
Yeah.
Whereas technology is moving at like light speed.
Yeah.
So they're creating new technologies faster than, like, the people who, I guess, govern could create laws to sort of like rein this stuff in, if it should even be reined in. There was a situation where a kid strapped a gun to a drone and was flying it around, and technically he didn't do anything illegal. I mean, like, people were freaked out, but like, I think at the point where the cops are sort of like, until someone gets hurt or something happens, like, we can't really enforce or do anything in relations to, like, what's going on. And like, in terms of a ton of other stuff, speaking of kids and social media, you got what's going on with TikTok, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
My
one
kids
thing
are
that
obsessed, by the way.
my kids are obsessed with TikTok too. It's like, but one thing that I would say, whether it's a positive or negative, is that the creation of having the ability to video somebody on a mobile device is profound, because the reality is there's so much good and bad stuff that happens around you, but you've never been able to record it before, if that makes sense,
Of course.
and so, now people are sort of saying, oh wow, I didn't know things were this bad, or there was this much inequality. The truth, it's always been there, but but the filter of where you're getting your information was biased to whatever
What people show you,
will show you. Now, it's
it's been
like,
democratized.
they
Anybody can
democratize. So I think
basically.
that's really powerful. And 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 so, in that process, talking about TikTok or whatever, what TikTok is actually showing us is that people's attention span is getting so much smaller, because now, when we
Yeah,
sit
exactly.
patiently and just watch like a 2-hour movie, now you just want all this snackable stuff, right? You
Like
just
Quigley, like Quigley, you gotta be
that's the
like,
whole thing. You don't want to know how for example, you don't want to know how the meal's made. You just want the meal, right? When you want
but
to
I mean
eat it.
that's super dangerous
It
because
is.
there's some
It is.
things that
Yeah.
have nuance and have to be
Yeah.
studied and discussed
Yeah.
and broken down, and
Yeah.
you can't get it all in a
Yeah.
15-second clip.
Yeah. And so, I think, the bigger problem that all of this thing is creating is the lack of patience,
Yeah,
in kids and humans in general. And that's really dangerous, because the reality is that people expect something right away. And the truth is, it's not just because you plug your computer in that it's working. There's a lot of things that go behind the process, under the hood, that you don't even know about.
no one cares how
And
the super made.
no,
No
but
one
and
does.
and the worry is, like you said, if people kind of get into this mindset that everything is just instant all the time, or everything is just there for them, who's going to build the real stuff behind the scenes to continue to fill this insatiable appetite for just wanting stuff all the time, right?
Do you think that's a real danger? Do you think there's a danger of there being less scientists, less engineers, and less people with the imagination to go out and build these things that we take for granted?
I I I think, you know you know you know the the bigger danger is that the people that have access to all of this, can will will develop interests in wanting to build things around this. But the people that aren't getting access to this in the first place won't even know what they're missing out on, right? And so, it's like the bigger divide is, you know is people that have their hands on technology pretty early. If you look at all of these like founders that end up creating all these like successful companies, I mean a big part of that was that somehow they, at an early age, you know they had their hands on this stuff, and so they were developing all of these habits, and then they started thinking around like, how can I make this experience better for myself or for somebody else?
Or there's something missing here.
There's something missing here. But the people who don't even have that, it's like, what's going to happen to them, right?
Yeah.
And you and I could talk about TikTok, but we know, there's people in the world who don't even know about TikTok, right? Let alone, YouTube or how to even get it.
That might be the next big frontier. I
Yeah.
think when you're talking about the excitement of emerging markets, and I think technology benefits from diversity, because you have new problems that no one
Yeah.
thought to even try to solve.
Yeah. I feel that, yeah, the emerging market has really sort of taken, taking all of the benefits of technology and trying to spread it to parts of the world where people don't really have it, and part of the problem is it doesn't spread as fast, because if you kind of look at it from a monetary standpoint, maybe you don't make as much money, but if you look at it from a human standpoint, and one of the other things that I feel that hopefully people have sort of figured out from COVID-19 is the world is a small place. It doesn't matter, if you're here or if you're on the other side of the world, we're so interconnected now. It's not like it's their problem and not our problem.
But that's how most people in the United States think. We kind of have
That's
this
right.
very,
Yeah. Yeah.
compartmentalized idea of how the world is set up.
Yeah. And so part of that is, it's like, if you end up, if something's good and you kind of keep it to yourself, and you don't spread it, eventually, people that are deprived, are gonna, I mean, if something happens adversely to them, that stuff is gonna start coming back to you. It's there's no benefit to just to what you're saying. You know, just thinking about yourself all the time. You got to realize that at the end of the day, we're a small piece in a huge puzzle, and what one piece missing on the puzzle impacts the entire picture of what the puzzle is going to look like.
I mean, hopefully people start to figure that out, especially when we're talking about problems that impact and affect us on a human level, like global warming, and is everybody's problem. You know what I mean? Poverty, especially on a global scale, is everybody's problem. Sickness now, again, we thought it was something that happened somewhere else on the corner of the globe somewhere that we just watched on TV, and now it's very real and it's hitting home.
Yeah, I feel the hope is that this will open up more eyes, but as you and I know, is that there's still people who feel a lot of this isn't true either, right? Because
and that's the other problem with the internet, right?
That's what I was going to say. You get misinformation there too, as well as it's like what's the source of truth? Yeah,
deep fakes are like the scariest thing in the world to me. Like that's like the next, like you already have like this whole fake news and people in positions of power eroding people's trust in the media, and then you have people just kind of posting whatever, and fake news is spreading just as fast as the truth, and you can't really tell the difference anymore. And it's a scary world that's kind of emerging from this whole thing.
Yeah, because the reality is, whether it's true or not, if people end up believing it if they keep getting exposed to it, right? Enough times. It's just like, advertising can be evil, right? Because you basically are just creating messages to try and, influence people to do something.
And there might not even be any motivation behind it. There are people that are just generally creating this news to create chaos. There are people who are trying to affect elections. There are people who have whatever agenda, and us sort of moving into this, like, hopefully I'm exaggerating, but this post-fact era is terrifying. When you can choose your own truth, it's like, everyone's retreating to their own corner. Everyone's becoming very tribal. It's a very weird world to live in. Especially facing the issues we're facing.
That's right. And as you said, generally, when you become tribal, you generally just having people in the tribe that think and act and like you, right? And so it becomes kind of a sounding board to just reinforce whatever inherent biases that you have.
And it's like the government is sort of devolving into a Reddit chat room, and it's like, what do you do to sort of keep and hold back like this tide? I mean, you kind of just go with the flow, I guess. we're going to begin to wind down. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Really quick, out of curiosity, because you chose technology, obviously, but if you had to choose any other profession in the world besides tech, what would it be?
I always wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Really? You're a
Yeah,
soccer fan?
yeah. I mean, I grew up playing a number of sports, but I played. I grew up in England, so soccer was big there. I
Like
played.
Arsenal fan?
I was a Liverpool fan, but this is finally they won the title. I've been like waiting for this for like over 30 years. but no, I've been a diehard Liverpool fan for a long time, since I was a kid, actually. But yeah, I love playing soccer. I actually played through college for part of the time, but I was getting quite a few injuries. But yeah, I mean, for me, that would be my dream, to play soccer.
Why soccer? Like, what about that
Oh,
sport in particular?
yeah. So what I love about soccer is um, is is a team aspect, right? Everybody kind of has a role to play, and generally the position I used to play was like attack or attack midfield, and I used to love like dribbling with the ball and trying to get past players and trying to like create an opportunity for somebody to score or to score myself, you know. Uh, but but yeah, I mean, for me, it was kind of the camaraderie of just being with a bunch of guys, and because one thing, well, this is kind of my take. There's a lot of like biases and issues that people have, but if you look at, just take professional sports as an example. Nobody cares what color you are in professional sports. The fans don't care what you are, because ultimately you're believing in this is my team, these are my people, and we want to win, right? So and it's funny, like outside of sports, then everybody starts looking at things through a different lens, but you know but you know but as a team, like I played with a diverse group of people, and it was always this is kind of like my brother sort of thing. It was never about, hey, this is this guy, or this is,
Background,
yeah. And I think if the world kind of looked at things like that versus trying to like look at what's different, but look at like what kind of unites us. That's what I like about team sports,
yeah.
ultimately, because when you play team sports, the focus isn't really on the individual. It's about the collective group and about playing to your strengths, because not everybody's good at doing everything, but ultimately you're working together to try and bring out the best in one another, not to try and bring one another down in the process, right? Because
Yes, you
yeah,
could only win as a team.
exactly, yeah.
So hopefully, like overall, like we start looking at things in terms of what we have in common versus what we have different than each other. And I'll try to be an optimist. I've been like very pessimistic about like the way things have been going, because like I don't even watch the news anymore, man. But that was really interesting. I would have never guessed soccer.
Yeah, and to be honest, I've stopped watching the news for years now. I don't bother looking at it, because, fortunately or unfortunately, they're saying the same stuff, right? And it's like, most of the time it's all negative, because people just want to gravitate to negativity. And the truth is, you only have 24 hours in a day. Your mind is like a sponge. If you if you spend time looking at anything that's negative, it's going to just keep permutating in your thoughts, and eventually it's just going to sort of manifest itself in the way you conduct and act around people.
That's part of your overall diet. Like that's how I like
Yeah.
to think about it.
Yeah,
If you eat junk food all day,
that's right.
you're going to be a relatively like unhealthy person. So if like
Yeah.
all of the information, all you're consuming in terms of like content, and you're just watching all this negative stuff, it's going to have adverse effects in the way you interact with people, and how you think, and how you interact with other human beings around you.
Yeah, it's so important. Basically, you know, just try to focus your time on things that can build you up versus tear you down, right?
And that's the hope. All right,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Lomit. I appreciate like you taking the time out to sit down and talk to me. This has been great. Hopefully we can
Hey,
do it again in the near future.
definitely. Thanks for having me, man. It was a pleasure. I didn't ask you, where you located?
I'm actually in New Jersey literally right now as we speak.
Okay. Okay.
So the East Coast at one point was
Yeah.
like, I guess on like, from the general perspective, it was like Mad Max
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
of Dome situation.
Yeah.
But now I think we're sort of the best place to be. We're kind of trying to keep everybody else out because life is sort of kind of like, coming back to normal. I went to a restaurant the other day. It was kind of
Yeah.
empty, but I went to a restaurant the other day. It was nice. So things are starting to go back to normal. Where are you?
I'm in San Francisco in California, and we're kind of the same thing. I mean, for the most part, we've been pretty strict here, but as a state, when they started loosening up some of the restrictions, things started to go back up. Now it's kind of coming back down. But yeah, it feels weird. Like went to a restaurant, maybe like everything's kind of spread out, and but
At this point,
yeah.
I'll take what I could get.
I'll take. It's good.
Yeah.
But it just feels. Yeah, it just feels weird where you just have to walk around with masks now, right? And you're trying to have conversations with people, and
Yeah. I don't know. I think right now it's just as much a courtesy as a medical like necessity.
Yeah.
Because people, if you walk into a room without a mask, people look at you like you're like a wildly rude person.
Yeah.
So hopefully things get back to normal soon.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't mind wearing a mask, and do my part to stop the spread, because because it's not, I mean, some people look at it, well, I'll probably survive this, but it's not about you surviving. It's about what if you infect someone who doesn't, right?
Like the
Yeah.
team. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate this again, and I guess I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All
man.
right. Later.
Weekend.
Now,